The Cinders of Dezu, written and read by Oliver Tonic. A tyrant king, a missing girl, and a journey through a perilous world. Join me for this completed sci-fi fantasy novel read as an audio series. Enjoy the story from here on, or binge from the beginning with the first episode. Like and subscribe if you enjoy. My audiobooks are totally free. If you'd like to donate to support my writing, though, check out my Patreon in the description. And now, back to the tale. Chapter 4. Stolen. Cairo woke up with a start. He sat up quickly and was dismayed to see another new location. This time it was a small cabin room. He was sitting up in a small bed next to Julian, who was sleeping but beginning to stir. At the foot of the bed stood a man with his back to them. He was standing before a workbench in a light brown coat, working on something Cairo couldn't see. The window near the bed showed the night to be nearly over, as a soft blue light began to filter in from the dark night sky. Cairo began to gently shake his friend. Julian's eyes fluttered open. He locked his eyes with him, and Cairo gestured to their captor. Julian nodded, and then slowly began removing the knitted blanket from off them. "I'm glad you're awake," came the man's voice. They both snapped their attention to him, but he was still facing away, working on the bench. They almost weren't sure he was talking to them. Cairo started to respond. Go ahead, and ask your questions. We haven't got much time," the man said. He still wasn't turning around to look at them. Cairo could see now he had a bag of some kind that he was loading with things. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Julian decided to get right to the point. "Who is you, and how did we get from... Julian's eyebrows furrowed as he touched his lips. It felt like his tongue was too big for his mouth. He felt a bit fuzzy, too. The man turned around. He had long hair with lots of gray in it, but clearly at some point it had been a vibrant blonde. He was thin, with cool gray eyes. This man, too, was aged, but had the face of a younger man. "I'm Harper," he said. He walked to the side of the bed and tapped his fingers on an unseen surface. Before their eyes, the thing appeared as if from nothing. "And you traveled by wheelbarrow." He went back to the bench and began working again. The boys were looking at a large wheelbarrow that had suddenly appeared next to them. Cairo spoke up next. Why can't I talk good?" "I stuck you with this." Harper held up a small needle. "It's a tranquilizer, an anesthetic derived from a local flower called a simi. It puts you to sleep almost instantly when it's in your system, but it also has the temporary side effect of making you loopy, I guess you could say, and not in full control of your speech patterns." The man was speaking quickly. Cairo blinked several times at the needle as Harper put it back down on the bench. "You and things disappear." "Right." Harper turned around. His lips were pressed together. "So, you met our king? A lot of what he said to you is true. You are in another dimension. The most relevant thing to know about this world is that it's permeated by a substance known as delinium. It changes everything about this place, from the animals to the plant life. There are things here that truly boggle and baffle the mind." He looked out the window a moment, lost in thought. Then he snapped back to attention and continued. "Anyway, that goes for the people here as well." He lifted his arm to show them his hand was missing. His face then faded along with the rest of his body, so that only his clothes hovered in place. The clothes leaned over and touched the foot of their bed. The bed and the blankets vanished. The two now looked as though they were reclined, yet hovering in midair. They were dumbfounded and instinctively tried to grab at something to hold themselves up. Then, with another tap of his invisible fingers, all of it came back into view. Julian was looking down at his blankets and realized he had drooled just a little bit. He slurped his lips and asked a question. "Are you, science man?" Harper smiled. Good catch, and good sentence. I am, actually. An engineer, but since I've been here, I've had the privilege of dabbling in many other scientific fields a great deal when I had the resources. Julian tapped the side of his forehead and looked at Cairo. I am on it. Cairo's eyes widened as a realization occurred to him. Raina! Cairo could see Harper's shoulders sag, though he was turned away. Yes, I am sorry about the girl. She was too close to him. I couldn't get to her before he caught on. Where? Said Cairo. She's still with him, I imagine. I saw her with his men as I escaped. Is he sending her home? Without us? Cairo asked. No, said Harper, stopping what he was doing again. He turned around. That's not possible. What do you mean? Said Julian. Harper sighed. I mean, that's the part he was lying to you about. He can't send you home. He can't send anyone home. Where was he taking us, then? Asked Cairo. Harper rubbed the back of his neck. He told you that the violet dilithium crystal can make you cross over. It can't. I should know, because I manufactured it. The only thing it's good for is limited transport between crossover points on this side of the dimensional wall. The room he was leading you to was an incinerator. What? Cairo threw his covers off and stood up from the bed. He immediately lost his stability when he tried to walk. Harper quickly stepped to the side of the bed and caught him. Hey, it's okay. We've got to go get her, Cairo said, trying to push past him. Stop, please, stop. You're in no condition. Cairo lost his footing completely, and Harper held him up. You don't know. She's my cousin, but more like a sister, and she's safe, Harper said. Cairo stopped struggling. She's safe, all right? I assure you. Harper was holding him up by his shoulders now. How would you know? Julian said, irritation in his voice. Because I know him, Harper said. Or I used to. Better than most. He began helping Cairo back into bed. These packs I'm making for you, they will be your lifeline. There's a bit of food and a few other essentials to get you started, along with a guide to help you get your bearings here. It also has a bit of information about the world, and what you'll need to know. Refer to it often. How do we get my cousin back? Asked Cairo. Harper shook his head as he placed the cover back over him. I don't know, and I can't help you with that now. What? Said Cairo. What about getting home? Said Julian. The sun was starting to come up. Harper looked towards the rays trying to make their way into the room. He stood up and went to the workbench to pack a few more things. You don't? Julian opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He was still processing what was said. Harper turned around with the two packs in either hand. They were burlap with straps and a tie at the top. When you wake up, these will be in your new dwelling. Follow the guide's instructions very carefully and to a T. It will keep you safe. You are going to be put down now. This is so when you wake up, you won't know how to get here if you're ever interrogated. I need my home safe for anyone else that needs help. He placed the bags at the foot of the bed. The boys then realized he had a needle in his hand again. Please, no, not again. I hate needles, said Julian, putting his hand out. We don't? Cairo was looking incredulously to the side as he meditated aloud on the words Harper had just said to them. He then stared directly into his eyes. You are out of your mind, he said. There's no way I'm letting Raina... His eyes widened as Harper drew closer to the head of the bed. With a despondent expression, he vanished totally. The two looked all around the room. Suddenly, Julian jumped at a prick on his forearm. He grabbed it, and Cairo caught his reaction just as he felt a prick on his own arm. A voice spoke as they both began to fade out of consciousness again. I'm sorry, boys. This is your home now. Chapter 5. Girl in a High Tower. Raina woke up to a knocking at the door. She had been tucked under the many covers of her very large bed. The previous night, after several more shimmering transfers from sanctuary to sanctuary, the king had led her on a short walk through the forest. Her eyes were swollen from crying when she laid eyes on a massive palace in the dark. The guards had quickly let them in, and he had led her through several winding corridors and up a few flights of stairs to a room where she was to sleep overnight. The room was large. It had to be to accommodate such a large bed. It was clearly not meant for someone as small as her. It housed a clothes cabinet and a few dressers. She was told to make herself comfortable before she was left alone in the very dark room. She cried herself to sleep on a night she thought she'd never get any rest at all. Now she found herself waking to the morning light streaming in through a window, one she hadn't paid much notice to the night before. Someone entered with a clinking sound of dishes rattling together. Reyna pulled the covers off the top of her head and looked to see who it was. It was a man, holding a tray of assorted items. He was wearing a long navy blue, thin and form-fitting coat that went down to his feet. He had gray boots that matched the gloves that held the tray in hand. "Good morning, Miss Reyna," he said. "Breakfast?" He approached and placed the tray on a nightstand near her bed, another thing she hadn't really noticed when she came in the night before. She looked at him and was taken aback for a moment. She was just waking up and realized the night before had really happened, and there was no waking from her predicament. But this man's face was not helping her come to grips with her new reality. Following behind him was Orion, entering through the open door. He gave her a quick smile as he walked in. "I see you've met Caddock," the king said, patting the man on the shoulder. "I have to call him my head servant, as that's his title, but the real truth is, he is my closest friend." Caddock smiled as he leaned over, setting up utensils on the tray. "You're too kind, sir." "Please," Orion said with an eye roll. "Don't sir me. I've known this man my whole life. He takes good care of me, so I know he'll take good care of you." Reyna rubbed her eyes and blinked at him a few times to make sure. "He's purple." The man before her really was purple, though Reyna observed he wasn't a deep purple like the king's crystal. He looked to be a kind of light purple, the kind she had colored mountains sometimes in her drawings of scenery at school. His skin was also contrasted by his white hair. Orion nodded. "That he is." Caddock finished straightening up the tray and turned to her, giving a slight bow. "Will that be all, miss?" Reyna kept staring at him and said nothing. Her mouth was a bit open. She noticed that his eyebrows were strange, too. They each came to a bit of a point at the arc. "That'll be all, Caddock. Thank you," said the king. Caddock turned and left the room, with Reyna watching him go. Orion looked at her, and then looked at him walk out the door, and then back at her again. He sighed. "Caddock is not a human." Reyna closed her mouth and looked up at him. "He's called a Nom. They're my people, the majority race in this world, certainly in my kingdom." "Are they all purple?" she asked. "No," he chuckled. "Nom come in all sorts. They generally look like you or me. They just come in more varieties." "Oh," Reyna said with a slow nod. "So, can you do me a favor?" "Yeah." "Be more polite when you see him again." Reyna cleared her throat and looked down. "I'm sorry." "It's all right," said the king as he sat on her bed. "Some of this food is going to be a little strange to you, too. I think you'll like it, though." Reyna looked at the tray. It had a fruit on it that she'd never seen before. It looked like a lemon, but it was the size of an orange. The rest was covered by lids. "Do you want me to cut it for you?" he asked. "Yes, please." Orion grabbed a knife from her tray and began cutting the fruit in half, then into slices. Reyna noticed the meat of it was a deep sea blue. The king handed her a piece. "Thank you," she said as she began to take a bite. The meat burst with juice and tanginess. The taste reminded her of bubble gum, but with a tart to it. Reyna's eyes were closed, experiencing the flavor. Orion chuckled as he saw a drop of blue juice escape the side of her mouth. "Yeah, I thought you'd like that one. It's been my favorite since I was a kid. Oh my gosh, said Raina with a mouthful as she reached for another piece. Orion watched her eat for a moment before he began. So I just wanted to update you. We are looking into your companions now. I promise it won't be long. Also, I didn't get a chance to get their names. What were they? Raina slurped up some juice and swallowed. Cairo is my cousin, but he's more like my big brother. Julian is his friend. And my friend, too. Okay, he said. Cairo and Julian. Cairo and Julian. He repeated it a few more times to himself as he committed it to memory. Raina interrupted him. Does everybody here have superpowers like you? Orion looked at her but didn't say anything. Superpowers, like you shoot fire and stuff. Do all, Nam do that? The king clenched his jaw a bit. You need not know everything about me or this place or the people in it. You'll be going home soon, remember? Raina was clearly excited. So, what's your origin story? Orion frowned. My what? Your origin. Superheroes all have origin stories about how they got their powers. Orion stood up. Raina's excitement waned as she saw the look on his face. I'll let you sort out the rest of the foods Caddock brought you, he said. Without another word, he turned and left the room, closing the door behind him. After a moment, Raina heard a click. She grew concerned. She hopped out of bed and ran to the door. She tried the door handle. It wouldn't budge. It was as she suspected. She pushed and pulled, but nothing happened. She started banging on the door. Hey! Hey! She called out for some time. There was no return of voice or even footsteps outside. She turned around and leaned her back against the door. She sank to her feet. The tears came again. Raina eventually ate her breakfast, though she spent a whole lot of time inspecting it. It was mostly made up of what she supposed were different types of fruits and veggies. The hot dish seemed like candied yams, only it had a granular quality to it. Another was a veggie that was crunchy like a carrot, but tasted something like a cross between a green apple and a stalk of celery. She was given a pitcher of water, as well as a pot of some kind of tea paired with a small bowl of sugar. The tea was very florally. She decided it tasted like how a daisy smelled, with none of the bitterness of chewing on one like she had done as a smaller child. When she was finished, she began exploring her room. She noticed a door that she had previously assumed was a closet and opened it up. Inside, she found a sink and a toilet. They were a bit different from the ones she had seen, though, as they weren't the customary white porcelain but were made of some other material. She decided to use the bathroom. The sink and toilet worked like normal with running water. The only difference was the sink there didn't seem to have a hot water option. But there was even a bar of soap next to it that didn't smell like much of anything. After a few hours had passed, she heard a knock at the door again. Raina quickly closed the dresser drawer she had been rifling through. In walked Caddock with another tray. Raina smiled. Hello. Good afternoon, miss. You can call me Raina, she said with her hands behind her back, making sure the drawer was closed. Miss Raina. He nodded as he placed the tray on the nightstand. He removed the picked-apart tray with its dirty dishes from her bed. How has your day been? She asked. Caddock paused and looked at her. It's been good. Thank you. Raina smiled. Was breakfast enjoyable? He asked. Sure, she said. Well, I hope this is even more to your liking. Caddock smiled as he walked out with the dirty tray. As he was closing the door, Raina spoke. Can I eat outside? Caddock stopped and looked at her through the cracked door. Or at like a dinner table or something? Caddock cleared his throat. The king has asked that you be kept in here, in this room for your stay. He says it's a big castle and he wouldn't want you to get lost while he's trying to find your relatives. Raina frowned. Oh. Caddock looked at her with a blank expression and then turned and let the door shut behind him. Raina heard the click of the lock. She turned back around to the dresser. She opened the drawer again. In it were clothes. Clothes that she found seemed to be for a girl just around her size. They were different than things she had seen before, though. None of them had any tags, which she wasn't used to. But they were also in a style she hadn't really seen in real life. They looked a lot like the kinds of clothes she had seen regular people wear in stories of knights and princesses, although she found neither a suit of armor nor a ballroom dress. She began laying out her favorites on the bed before checking out what Caddock had placed on her nightstand. She received another yellow fruit with the blue insides. She was excited about that. But when she lifted the lid of the largest dish on the tray, she almost jumped back. It was hard to decide what it was at first, but she decided on the thing being a kind of fish. It was headless, but had a spiked fin sticking out of the top that went all the way down its back. The fins on the other side were spiked too. The meat between them was pink and covered with a rather pungent, creamy yellow sauce. The whole thing sat in a bed of rice, something she finally recognized. Raina couldn't do it. She put the lid to the side and sat on the bed with her nose in a crinkle. She stared at it for a while, and then sighed. She decided she wasn't overly hungry just yet anyway, and went back to what she was doing with the outfits. She began straightening them out again and then lifted her pillow. Underneath, she had hidden all the stuff that she liked from the jewelry box, as well as what she'd found in another one of the drawers from earlier. She lifted up a necklace with a pretty pink gem cradled in a droplet-shaped pendant. She held it in the light from the window and watched it sparkle. She also found some earrings she was enamored with that were made of silver but were shaped like a diamond. Carved in the center and either side were small eyes, and protruding from the bottom was a metal flourish that looked like a ribbon that held tiny little yellow and blue jewels. She found it quite bizarre, and pretty. As she continued to check out the different things she had collected, she heard the sound of clinking metal on her tray. She whipped her head around to see what it was. This time, she actually did recoil at the sight of her plate. On it was a fairly large rat. It was on its hind legs, sniffing at her lunch. She screamed. The rat scurried off the tray and down her nightstand. Raina stood on top of her bed, continuing to scream as she watched the creature slip under her bed. She watched the spot where he had gone under and scanned the edges of her bed for him to come out. Nothing. Okay, that was dumb, she muttered to herself. It's just a rat. I love rats. Under my bed. Raina ultimately loved all animals. She wasn't particularly against any of them, except the mean ones. She'd played with rats at pet stores, but she also knew scary stories about rats from books she read in school. She didn't like the idea of something that could maybe nibble on her at night while she slept. That was a kind of consistent phobia of hers. For instance, she didn't mind spiders at all if she saw them outside. They generally didn't seem to harbor ill will at all. But in her room, she was scared they would hide somewhere and bite her on her arms and legs at night. They weren't completely above doing that. Raina jumped off the bed and knelt down on the floor. She got down on her belly to look under her bed to see if she could see him. She couldn't. The bed was dark, and she thought maybe there were a few other things down there that she hadn't discovered yet. She sighed and got up. She wandered over to the window and opened the hanging curtains all the way. The view was actually very nice. She had checked it out earlier before she started looking through the dresser drawers. She was up high and therefore could see quite a ways out. She was above the trees of the surrounding forest. They seemed busy with activity, even from here. She had seen a bird or two flying over the tops of them, but they were too far away for her to tell what kind. The window didn't open, and she was way too high up to sneak out even if it did. She whispered close to the glass, fogging it up as she did. Kai, where are you? Hey guys, it's Oliver. Thanks so much for listening. Give me a like and subscribe if you want to hear more. Support this book and my continued writing through Patreon. I'll have regular episodes up until all chapters of this story are fully released, so stay tuned.